Suining ran over panting and told him, "Didn't you say my enemy can't count a single slap?" You really got it right, you crow. Keywords of the novel. The Suining without pop-ups. Download the complete text of the Suining, and read the latest chapters of the Suining. Chapter 1. Sweet Potatoes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Sweet Potatoes. The coffin was carried in through the gate of the Prime Minister's mansion, surrounded by servants, as if carrying a new bride into the mansion. Let the coffin wait. The old lady of the Prime Minister's mansion, Rongshi, propped herself up very strongly. It's not too late to die after eating sweet potatoes. Suining, choose a big one for your grandmother. Suining carefully held the silver chopsticks and lightly tapped the sweet potatoes in the mud stove. When he heard a crisp sound, he picked up a well-organized one and tossed it back and forth in his hand. When he opened it, the sweet potato had a burnt yellow outer skin and yellow sand inside. It had just been roasted and was still steaming hot. After taking a bite of sweet potato, Mrs. Xiang was in pain for 3 times. That was a sunny day for several days in a row. There wasn't such a good sun anymore. Suining accompanied Mrs. Xiang to appreciate dried plums in the small garden. Just half an hour after giving the reward, Suining slipped on the moss and kicked Madame Xiang a foot away. After all, she was an elderly person. After being carried back to the east courtyard, she had been lying down for several days. Although she was bedridden, the old lady could either watch the maids embroider goldfish or watch the maids take care of 2 pots of flowers and plants. Day and night, it was easy to pass the day until the coffin entered the door. I looked at my son and didn't dare to curse myself for death, but the coffin didn't have long legs and wouldn't walk into the Xiang family on my own. Madame Xiang couldn't figure it out, so she called the people around her, "Grandma Su, go to the front yard and call the old master over. The snow has already buried my ankles, and with it approaching midnight, the weather is not good either." The door of the East Cross courtyard creaked, and a burly figure flashed through the curtains of the second door. A chill rushed in, and the flames in the mud stove trembled. It was the old master of the mansion, Tang, who arrived with a smell of wind and snow. Madame Xiang deliberately put on a face and picked a more aggressive expression. Although she is a woman and doesn't understand any major principles, if her son wants to take advantage of the hot iron and give her a ride, she won't comply. Tang breathed a sigh of relief, patted the snow particles at the corner of her robe, and picked up a roasted sweet potato from the mud stove to warm her hands. It's best to snuggle up to the mud stove and eat roasted sweet potatoes on this snowy day, but my mother is becoming more and more skilled at entertainment, she said. Madame Xiang snorted, "I'm almost stuck to the bed. Where's my mind for leisure? What's bothering my mother?" Tang took a bite of sweet potato. "You don't have any points in mind. Mother said about the coffin." Tang wiped her hand, shook her gray silk and gold robe, sat down wide, and slowly drank half a cup of tea. "That coffin was not prepared for mother. I read fewer books, so don't lie to me either." The tsiwu lost its mother and silently let out a mournful sound. It doesn't fly away day and night, guarding the old forest for years. The little crow is still like this, let alone the sun. The sun definitely has no intention of that. If the mother doesn't like it, I will let someone deal with it now. It's just a matter of a coffin, not worth getting angry about. Mrs. Xiang's tone softened a bit and she said, "If this coffin wasn't bought for me, then what's the use of carrying it back?" Tang, however, answered a different question. "Which servant in the East Cross courtyard has a weak mouth? If this news is revealed, I will reward her with this coffin." The servants were trembling. "The maids in my room are all honest and upright," said Mrs. Xiang, pointing to Suining, who was huddled behind the curtain like a quail. "You speak so loudly that you are not afraid to scare Suining." Madame Xiang pouted at Suining and asked her to move in front of Tang. Tang rubbed her hands and looked up at her daughter for the first time. At first glance, Suining didn't look good. At the second glance, it's not as good as at the first glance. Her slender hair was paired with small sandalwood-colored pearl flowers, her lotus-colored clothes, and a light green skirt. Due to washing the clothes too many times, the colors have become mottled. A pair of small feet, wearing dark green embroidered shoes, claiming to be embroidered shoes, have been worn for 2 years. The big toes are like bamboo shoots, always wanting to arch out. Her slender eyes lack expression, her long eyelashes are somewhat dull, and her lips are thin and white. This appearance appears at night, and those who are timid may get up and burn paper in fear. It's really the 18th change of a female college student. Suining has grown, and it's becoming even more difficult. Xiaoniang rubbed her hands again. Madame Xiang was dissatisfied and said, "Is it unfair for a child in Suining to speak like this? You come here." Xiaoniang finally called Suining. Suining trembled. Although she was summoned by her own father, it seemed like she had been struck by some thunder. She felt a spark in her eyes, as if with a bang, and the thunder ignited her internal organs. Her whole body couldn't help but feel hot, and her mind was about to burst into smoke. She felt like she was about to be cremated on the spot. "Are you aggrieved?" Before Suining could answer, Xiaoniang said again, "Suining wants to cook and wash dishes in the mansion. He just wants to sweep the floor, and brooms are all readily available. How many people are envious of such a free and easy day?" Madame Xiang hates to let her son read too many books and become a genius, learning with sharp teeth and sharp lips like a pouting monkey. Every time she tries to reason with him, she is always unable to explain, and every time she is anxious, sweating profusely and helpless. The weather is cold and the earth is freezing. My mother took a break earlier, thinking so much makes me unable to sleep. Xiaoniang lifted her robe and didn't forget to take another sweet potato before leaving. The East Cross courtyard fell silent again, and the charcoal fire in the mud stove made a crisp sound, accompanied by snowflakes, making it even more lonely. Suining. Madame Xiang sighed, "How do I feel? Your father is more affectionate to sweet potatoes than to you. That sweet potato seems to be his own." Madame Xiang was honest, and after speaking, she regretted, "Suining, don't be sad either. You still have a father. As long as my grandmother no longer gets angry about the coffin. Do you think I called your father here all for the sake of the coffin? Foolish child, life and death have their own destiny, not in the coffin. It's just that you haven't seen your father for a long time, how can you not get close to him? Grandmother is old, how can she always take care of you, and still need your father's care? It's snowing heavily outside, why bother asking him to come here and cross the courtyard to anger me, not just for you?" Madame Xiang silently looked at the door curtain. As soon as Xiaoniang got up and went out, the curtain was still warm. She withdrew her gaze and murmured, "If your father has the heart, he will take care of you." Suining has long forgotten what it feels like to be taken care of by her father. If she continues to live like this, she will believe that it was on any tree. The fruit on the tree is good, at least the tree will not dislike the fruit it bears. She didn't expect to go to Xiaoniang's place. However, Madame Xiang's mouth seemed to be open, so it was not accurate. The next day, before Suining got up to tidy up, he heard someone from the front yard come and say that the master wanted to see her. It's already 2020, and I wish everyone a happy new year. New book upload, please support us. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Tang Xiaoniang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Tang Xiaoniang. It is said that in ancient times, unpopular concubines were brought back by the emperor, and when they wanted to see Tianyan again and regain her favor, they were often so excited that they wiped away their tears. Even worse, the road was difficult to walk on, and my legs were weak, requiring 2 eunuchs to stand on each other. I really empathize with it. I don't know which thunder didn't strike right, but Xiaoniang actually remembered her daughter. If the grandmother who was lying in bed in the East Cross courtyard heard this news, she would probably have been startled out of her dying illness and secretly boasted about her son's growth as a successful candidate. Yesterday she just gave a little instruction, and now Xiaoniang is enlightened. The maidservant Mingzhu, who was serving Suining, couldn't even close her mouth. Early in the morning, her teeth grinned in her ear and she said, "It must be because the master saw that the girl had served the old lady meritoriously. What would he want to reward the girl for?" Although it was a call from his own father, after the first day of junior high school, there may be no 15 left. I don't know why Suining hesitated when facing the battle. This sudden summons exuded a demonic aura. On weekdays, the Prime Minister Suining lives in the west courtyard, crosses 2 blue stone paths planted with full moon flowers, and then enters his grandmother's east courtyard. Now that she's going to the front yard, she didn't tell her grandmother, fearing that she might burst into tears in case of emotional excitement. Coming out of the courtyard from the west, passing through a white arch carved with 12 zodiac signs, passing through 2 hanging flower gates and a long corridor, bypassing the garden, a small pond, a rockery, 2 steps up, and pushing open a vermilion gate, is the front yard. The Prime Minister's family is wealthy and prosperous, which has been earned by several generations. Not to mention the external villages, this 3-in and 3-out mansion alone is also one of the few in Qinglou. In the summer, the mansion keeps freezing, and just as autumn approaches, charcoal is lit. Even the second-class girls in the mansion are treated like ordinary ladies from other families. Walking around the mansion in winter, my back was sweating. The inner hall of the front yard was burning with plenty of charcoal, very warm. Xiaoniang leaned on the Nanmu Grand Tutor's chair and felt confused. Wearing a silk-woven gold robe. This robe is made soft and dense, and the silk is also a new material from Suzhou. The embroidered ingot patterns on the corners of the robe are fine and smooth, making it not an ordinary embroidery lady's job. Just talking about this robe alone, it will cost at least several taels of silver, enough for rural people to eat and chew for 6 months. He dusted off his robe, opened his mouth, revealing 2 rows of teeth. Xiaoniang's concubine, Tang Xiaoniang, quickly picked a grape and put it in his mouth. Grapes from unknown places in the icy and snowy world, purple-black, shining black, like eyeballs one by one. Tang Xiaoniang is the eye of Xiaoniang. It is said that when she married into this mansion, Xiaoniang slept in her room for 6 months in a row. She completely forgot about the big wife and the children of the old lady. If placed in the palace, Tang Xiaoniang would be the darling of Jiaofeng, at least in the same position as a noble consort. How glorious. The concubines of the entire Xian kingdom are probably not worthy of lifting her shoes. Counting back, she has been in the Prime Minister's mansion for more than a decade now, and she is also an old onion. The young girl from Xuanqing Shui has grown her white hair in vain, hoping to serve wealthy masters like Xiaoniang. Xiaoniang's eyes never left Tang Xiaoniang, and she was the only concubine she recognized. Even when Suining entered the inner hall, Xiaoniang did not pay attention. Being a concubine and doing this is truly a way to honor our ancestors. Tang Xiaoniang's eyes flickered, and she first saw Suining. She glanced at her and fiddled with her handkerchief, saying with a smile, "Since Miss Eyre has arrived, I have received the punishment myself. Let's kneel outside." A pair of half-a-person tall gray-white porcelain plates were adorned with dark green dwarf pine trees. The taste of pine needles was a bit strange, and Tang Xiaoniang's words were also a bit strange. Your father is also for your own good. If he doesn't teach you how to be a good husband, how can you marry a good husband in the future? Tang Xiaoniang's voice was so pleasant, like a warm wind blowing around her ear, making her slightly tipsy. My daughter doesn't know what mistake she made, Suining asked in reverse. Since her rebirth in this Prime Minister's mansion, she has been quite well behaved, knowing that she used to be disliked and foolish, always being manipulated by these people. Even when she was pushed into the pond by Tang Xiaoniang back then, she dared not make a sound, only saying that she didn't see the road clearly before falling into the water. It was only because her father was not in charge of her that she was afraid of being pinched by Tang Xiaoniang and was covered in bruises. But living a life of enduring humiliation is not good. Since that's the case, why not live boldly once? No one is born without being beaten. Miss Eyre has really grown up and dared to question the master. Tang Xiaoniang chewed a grape and said, "It seems that the master punished her to kneel, but she is not convinced." "Do you want to know why I punished you?" Xiaoniang frowned. "I want to know." "You tell her." Xiaoniang rubbed Tang Xiaoniang's hand. "Of course, it was about the coffin that caused the old man's life to be grand, and he even called your father to scold him. I think it was the secret you told." "I don't have it." "Even if you tell a secret, you won't admit it, will you?" "These days, I have been serving my grandmother in the East Cross courtyard. In the evening, I have been sleeping in the small bed in the compartment and have never left the East Cross courtyard for half a step. Except for my personal maid Mingzhu, anyone around my grandmother can testify. If my father doesn't believe me, he can send someone to interrogate me." Xiaoniang frowned, and if he wanted to investigate, he could naturally find out. Suining has been accompanying the old lady these days, and she is generally not clear about the matter of the front yard. Tang Xiaoniang quickly slapped Xiaoniang's back and said, "Let's not talk about this matter for now. The fact that the old lady is now bedridden is also the fault of Miss Eyre. As a young lady, her family is unstable and almost killed her. If the master does not punish her, the people of Qinglou will laugh at our mansion for not having rules, unclear rewards and punishments, and improper behavior. I don't know how many lifetimes I've had a grudge against Tang Xiaoniang. She's like an old hen fighting with red eyes, holding on to Suining and refusing to let go." Suining knelt on the ground with a thud. As Suining knelt down suddenly, Tang Xiaoniang felt surprised. "Are you aware of your mistake? Will you accept the punishment of kneeling?" Xiaoniang looked down at her. Suining understood in her heart that Tang Xiaoniang was stirring up trouble on the side. If she gritted her teeth tightly, she wouldn't kneel. Depending on Xiaoniang's temperament, she might have someone take a family law whip. Being whipped doesn't matter, maybe she will still kneel, and I don't know how many hours she will kneel. My grandmother couldn't move in the East Cross courtyard. Even if she knew about the situation here and sent a nanny, my father could have executed it first and reported it later. Anyway, when the time came, he would have been beaten and punished, so it would be useless to argue with anyone. What doesn't make the mouth soft? Suining looked at Xiaoniang with tears in her eyes and said, "Don't say it's my daughter who is wrong, even if she is not wrong. My father asked my daughter to kneel, and she didn't dare not. In the small garden, I acted recklessly and hurt my grandmother, and I deserve to die. I feel guilty and often cry at night. My father punished me for this, and I deserve it. But there's one thing, my daughter wants to tell my father to know." "What?" "That day, I slipped and injured my grandmother. Someone was behind my back." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Fraud. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 4. Twisting the Waist. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Twisting the Waist. Xiaoniang didn't give up. The small garden is damp, and moss is not uncommon. The moss in the small garden is green moss, and the moss that caused me to slip that day is big gray moss. Suining pointed to the dark green dwarf pine on the gray-white porcelain plate in the inner hall and said, "Where there is big gray moss in the mansion, only Dad's inner hall is used to cover these two dwarf pine trees. The dwarf pine usually falls pine needles, but when you throw the moss, Xiaoniang didn't pick it clean. As I counted at that time, there are still 2 pine needles inserted in the big gray moss." "Nonsense, I picked it up completely." "Not a single one." Xiaoniang jumped and said, "If you want to say that I didn't pick it up completely, I'll tear your mouth apart." Tang Xiaoniang tightly held her handkerchief and supported her heart, her face calm, but her heart was smoking like boiling water. Tang Xiaoniang really doesn't want to believe that this foolish person who ascended to heaven was born in October when she was pregnant. If she were born, she would know she was so foolish. Drowning in the toilet wouldn't make her grow up. Before, Xiaoniang wasn't so foolish, was she? Yes, they are all from Suining. This little hoof, haven't seen you for a few days. Did she take her head and go to the Buddha to have sex? How did you become so clever? Xiaoniang remained silent and only lowered her head to chew on the cheese. Tang Xiaoniang's heart twitched. Just now, Xiaoniang said he wanted to whip. The servants in the mansion are in high spirits. The whip has already been presented, and they dare not delay it for a moment. Xiaoniang has delicate skin and tender flesh, smooth, and is stillborn to Tang Xiaoniang. How could she be beaten? The whip doesn't have long eyes. If it hits the wrong spot, such as on the face, it won't be able to look. In the future, not only will it marry any royal relatives or nobles, but even ordinary young men will despise it. Getting whipped is also someone else getting whipped. Xiaoniang can't stand it. Thinking of this, Tang Xiaoniang snatched the whip from the servant's hand and raised it high, pushing Xiaoniang to kneel down and crying, "Who let you harm someone? That's your grandmother, your second sister. What if we throw them out of harm's way? You're so young and vicious. What should I do with your daughter? It's better to kill her." Tang Xiaoniang secretly observed Xiaoniang's expression. Xiaoniang remained silent. Seeing that Xiaoniang remained silent, Tang Xiaoniang threw the whip to the ground and knelt down, tears streaming down her face. "Master, Yener is still young. If you hit her, at least there won't be 3 girls in this mansion. If Master wants to hit her, it will be my mother who will bear it. I will teach her no way." When Tang Xiaoniang used to whip Suining, that's not what she said. At that time, there were also servants who couldn't bear it and knelt down to beg Tang Xiaoniang for mercy. Tang Xiaoniang said that the child is growing and has soft bones. It's okay to be whipped twice. If he can't die, don't make a fuss. I was beaten to death back then, so there shouldn't be much fuss. Master. Dad. Tang Xiaoniang and Xiaoniang eagerly tugged at Xiaoniang's robe. Xiaoniang scolded Suining and said, "Your sister is younger than you. She doesn't know how to handle things, do you? But after falling, it's a big deal. It's worth hiding the moss and asking for punishment. Look at how scared your sister is, her face has turned yellow." Yes, Xiaoniang is afraid, is she not afraid of herself? Where is my father on those thunder and rain nights, those feverish nights, those days when I was grabbed and beaten by Tang Xiaoniang? Has he ever thought he would be afraid? It is unreasonable for adults to be biased. Suining knew in her heart that Xiaoniang couldn't withstand the whip. If she dared to stand still, there was no guarantee that any cloud would be wrong and rain would fall on her head. So I don't argue, just a faint sentence. If Grandma finds out, I don't know what to think. Xiaoniang paced the room and pondered a lot. If Madame Xiang finds out about Xiaoniang's actions and relies on her humble and unyielding nature, she doesn't know what will happen. Since that's the case, it's better to solve it early. Just punish Yener to kneel for an hour. Don't do this in the future, it's you who is young and confused. Tang Xiaoniang and Xiaoniang both breathed a sigh of relief. Suining left the front yard and returned to her own backyard. Xiaoniang was stared at from a distance by the butler Zhang Quan, and knelt down in the inner hall corridor covered with blankets. Since everyone knows about this matter and can't suppress it, Madame Xiang has really been injured. We must punish Xiaoniang by kneeling down, which is the lightest way. The wind and snow didn't stop, although I moved a charcoal pot to Xiaoniang's side, it was still cold after all. The pain on my body made me lose face. Xiaoniang knelt down, tears streaming down her eyes. You too, why did you fall for Miss Eyre's trap? You used to bully her, Tang Xiaoniang despised. Xiaoniang cried and said, Mom, it's all you. They say Suining and Grandma go to the small garden every day, they say Grandma doesn't like me, they say it's not easy for you as an adult to do something, let me do something to make Grandma slip. If we lose Grandma, our mansion will be ours in the future. You keep your voice down, Tang Xiaoniang nodded at Xiaonian's head. What's the use of throwing moss? Why do you pick on the big gray moss in your father's house while those sweeping women are not paying attention, pouring some tung oil on the road, throwing some pebbles, or throwing 2 fruit peels, so that the endless gods don't know? Mother has such a way, why didn't she say it at that time? Who knew you were so foolish? I'm afraid others won't know you did it. Mother is not stupid, I will personally take action in the future. Xiaonian's tears were like broken beads. Tang Xiaoniang quickly covered Xiaonian's mouth. Xiaonian's daughter, Miss Qianjin, has a temperament that rarely suffers. If we keep talking, we don't know what else she wants to shout out. Xiaonian was stared at and knelt for an hour, and Tang Xiaoniang trembled as she walked with heartache. In ancient times, an hour was 2 hours, and the time was not short. When Xiaonian knelt down for a long time and stood up, she felt like the sky was spinning and the earth was almost falling to the ground. The mother and daughter supported each other, one holding a woven handkerchief, swaying and twisting their bodies like 2 injured snakes. After taking a few steps, Tang Xiaoniang looked back at the direction of the West Cross courtyard and couldn't help feeling resentful. This second girl, Little Hoof, we've hit her path. So what's going on, mother? She definitely didn't pick up the moss. She doesn't have any evidence in her hands. If she had, she would have taken it out long ago and asked your father to handle it fairly. If your name is not written on the moss, you can resist it and deny it. At that time, she will be charged with framing, and it will be her who will be punished. Mother didn't say it earlier. Who would have thought these 2 girls had a sudden enlightenment, Tang Xiaoniang sighed. Suining looked at Tang's mother and daughter from a distance across the rockery. What a mother-daughter. The direction of twisting the waist is the same. They used to punish themselves, but they also twisted and left like this. This time it may be a pain on the body, twisting much slower. Maid Mingzhu ran over panting and said, I searched carefully, but couldn't find what the girl said. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Dragon Subduing Wood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Dragon Subduing Wood. How could Mingzhu possibly find those non-existent things? It's just to scare Tang Xiaoniang and her daughter. People who do bad things are easily exposed without fear. Madame Xiang heard Grandma Su talk about the disheveled appearance of Tang Xiaoniang and Xiang Yan, and laughed as if she had driven 10 or so ducks. She said with a thud, their mother and daughter are also today. If you treat me well, you need to give 2 pillars of incense to your ancestors. Xiang Suining fed her rice porridge, and she drank half a bowl more. Over the years, Tang Xiaoniang has been stirring up the wind and rain in the mansion. How could she ever take Madame Xiang seriously? Even the guests from other marquis' mansions were invited to the banquet, and Tang Xiaoniang, with a hostess-like demeanor, rode away in a carriage with a clattering sound. On the 15th day of each month, she donates fragrant oil to the Hugua temple in the west of the city, and on the first day of the Lunar New Year, she goes to the Xiangshi temple to light incense and kowtow. If someone is working hard, grandmother can rest. Xiang Suining comforted. I don't know about her yet, Mrs. Xiang snorted. It's because she comes from a humble background and hasn't experienced major battles, so whenever she has the opportunity to show her face, she never misses it. She just wants to show off and let everyone know that she is in charge of this Prime Minister's mansion. She is in charge of everything, and I don't argue with her, but she shouldn't tolerate people everywhere. In those years, whenever Tang Xiaoniang caused trouble for Xiang Suining, either by beating or punishing, news would reach Xiang Laofu. Xiang Laofu only felt that she didn't have wings and couldn't fly over to protect her immediately, so she scolded Tang Xiaoniang afterwards. However, with Xiang Dang's protection, Tang Xiaoniang always remained unharmed. "Grandma, don't be angry. Don't be angry, don't be angry." Mrs. Xiang stroked Xiang Suining's hair. "Grandmother is happy in her heart, and big grudges will be avenged. Let's celebrate by drinking alcohol. Suining, bring a glass of rice wine to grandmother. Grandmother is still sick. I just want to have a glass of rice wine. Grandmother is not obedient again." Okay, grandma, listen to Suining. Ba Buddha, I am the elder in this mansion and should be most compassionate. Tang Xiaoniang has suffered, and I cannot secretly make fun of her. If I want to laugh, I will also let go of it, haha. The old lady smiled with wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. Xiang Suining fed old lady Xiang with medicine, took 2 pieces of dim sum, and combed her hair. When she returned to her side, old lady Xiang told Mammy Su, who was waiting beside her, "Didn't you get some dragon subduing trees the year before last? You go and get 2 and hang them on the door of the second girl. You can avoid ghosts and evil spirits so that others won't always trouble her." Grandma Su selected the 2 thickest ones and sent them to Xiang Suining's room. These 2 dragon-slaying trees are as thick as Xiang Suining's arms. Xiang Suining loosened her hair, took off the pearl flowers and put them in a jewelry box. She washed her face with warm water brought up by the pearl, cleaned her hands, and wiped them with a white handkerchief, feeling warm all over her body. "It's getting dark early now, and Miss Air has been running all day. Go to bed earlier," Mingzhu said, twisting her handkerchief. "I can't sleep." "Don't be afraid, Second Mississippi, didn't the old lady give Second Miss the dragon subduing wood? Demons and monsters can't get close to her body, so she can sleep soundly. I am not afraid of demons and monsters." "Second Miss, are you not afraid of demons and monsters?" Mingzhu twisted her handkerchief and put it on the shelf, then spread out the bedding for Xiang Suining. She swept it twice and lowered her head to smile. "Miss often dreams." And that year, when the mansion was listening to a play, Second Miss saw the colorful actors on stage and scared her to sleep at night. The next day, her body was so hot that she couldn't get up from bed. Mingzhu didn't continue. "That was 4 or 5 years ago. Do you remember that day when I had a high fever and couldn't get up?" Tang Xiaoniang said she was an old hen and would often lay a nest. Mingzhu put down the tent and the candlelight was dim. Xiang Suining closed her eyes, as if she could still see the stage. "That was my grandmother's birthday, and the government invited the best theatrical troupe from Xiangua to perform songs such as Drunken Concubine, Worshipping the Moon Pavilion, Qian Nu Li Hun, and Zhao Shi Orphan. The first 2 songs were good, but when it came to Qian Nu Li Hun, it was a bit scary." As soon as Zhao Shi Orphan was released, Xiang Suining hurriedly squeezed into the arms of Xiang Lao Madam. Xiang Lao Madam also turned pale with fear, and before the play was finished, she gave them silver to leave. Banners sway, python clothes overlap. In the dream, it was colorful until a gust of cold wind extinguished the candle. Xiang Suining opened her eyes. The room was a bit dark, and the window was wide open. The wind poured in from the window and rushed onto the tent. The pearl usually falls asleep not far away. Pearl. Without anyone responding, the pearl fell asleep. Xiang Suining lit a candle and went to close the window with a candlestick. As soon as he arrived at the window, a person in red suddenly stood up, slightly taller than Xiang Suining, with a pale face and no facial features, so he didn't see his eyes or mouth, only his hair hanging on his shoulder. Xiang Suining thought he was dreaming. "I thought it was still my grandmother's birthday that year, and it was still under that stage." Until the person in red stretched out a pair of white, 2-inch long hands with nails. "Pearl." Xiang Suining unconsciously shouted, as if to give himself courage. From childhood to adulthood, no matter what, Mingzhu accompanied her. Mingzhu had been poor since childhood, and her parents had passed away early. She had no money to buy coffins back then, so she voluntarily put up a banner to sell her head for silver to bury her parents. Although her brother and sister-in-law were reluctant, they watched her go to the Prime Minister's mansion with tears in their hands. Mrs. Xiang saw the filial piety of the pearl and thought it would be useful, so she transferred it to Xiang Suining's room. Mingzhu finally heard Xiang Suining's call and got up in her cloak, holding a cup of tea. "Are you thirsty, Miss Eyre? Why are you standing at the window facing the wind? It's really cold." The person in red was like a wooden figure, twisting his neck to look in the direction of the pearl. Mingzhu was so shocked that she didn't say a word and her mouth softened before closing. The person in red twisted his neck again and looked towards Xiang Suining. "You." Xiang Suining was actually afraid. "Who are you?" The person in red does not speak. "You. Your fingernails are dirty." The man in red lowered his head, looked at his fingernails, and then looked up. "Don't be so clever, you can't run away. He can see it. Not blind." In this way, at midnight, in this remote courtyard of Sichuan, he could easily take Xiang Suining's life by jumping into the house without much effort. There is no place to hide. He has a clear view at a glance. "What do you want to do?" Xiang Suining's shoulder trembled. Is she going to die on such a winter night? "I haven't lived enough yet, so if I don't want to, I'll die." Red-clothed man. "You keep an eye on it." He stretched out his 2-inch-long nails and pinched his own neck for a while. His face, which had no facial features, was covered in blood, which was very bloody. The dark red blood was like earthworms arching out of his hair and climbing onto his clothes. "I have seen someone kill someone before, but I have never seen someone kill me before. When I start to pinch myself hard, I feel like I'm bleeding. I've traveled far and wide, and I've never heard of it before." Xiang Suining was stunned and said, "You." The person in red pinched her small face and said, "Those who dare to make trouble will have this fate. Now it's your turn to strangle you." Xiang Suining was startled and picked up a candle to press onto the hand of the person in red. The person in red wiped his hand, revealing a black mole as big as a copper coin. "I know you." Xiang Suining was taken aback. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Uncle Tang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Uncle Tang. Miss Eyre, as much as you know, you won't live long. You know I'm the second girl, you know me. I don't care how many girls you are. If you dare not be honest again in the future, let alone you. Even the old lady you serve, I can twist her head off. Be reckless. Also, do not urinate for illumination. This is the Prime Minister's mansion, how can outsiders act recklessly here? Upward dog head chopping. Xiang Suining reached out and grabbed at his face. The person in red took a step back and ran back. Xiang Suining picked up the newly awarded dragon-slaying wood from his grandmother and followed behind, saying, "Don't run away, come and catch the thief." The person in red didn't expect Xiang Suining to catch up. When did the reputation of the Prime Minister's mansion become so fierce? After chasing the Prime Minister for half a year, Xiang Suining finally blocked the man in red. That is Tang Xiaoniang's bedroom. The walls are adorned with the shadows of flowers, and the curtains roll in the wind of the Lotus Water Hall. Holding the chain and playing towards the moonlight, the fragrant golden dragon moves, and people are in the palace of Qinglou. Tang Xiaoniang, wearing a pink embroidered white peony skirt and shaking her handkerchief, was singing "Jade Hairpin" to Xiang Dang. "Sorry to bother you." The person in red only wanted to shake off Xiang Suining, but didn't care much. He pushed the door and climbed in. Xiang Dang was taken aback and said, "Who is he? What kind of thing is this?" The person in red has no facial features, and at first glance, Xiaoniang may not be accustomed to it, but at first glance, it may not be as good as before. My brother. Lol. Why pretend to be a god or a ghost? Xiaoniang raised her hand and took off the mask of the person in red. A black mole the size of a grain of rice jumped out of the corner of the red-clothed man's eye. It is indeed him. Among the people seen in Suining, only Tang Wu had many black moles on his body, some as big as copper coins and some as small as Job's tears, as if he had rolled a few rolls in an ink pool. Do you still remember that year, on his grandmother's birthday, when Tang Wu and his troop entered the mansion and knelt down to receive the reward money? Suining still stared at the black mole at the corner of his eye. Do you still remember that year when Tang Wu entered the mansion? Xiaoniang was angry and destroyed a porcelain. Tang Wu, you've completely turned a deaf ear to what I'm saying to you. Xiaoniang lost his focus on listening to Xiaozuer and said, how did you come out again? Tang Wusha's white mask was thrown on the ground, and there was still red mucus flowing on it. Xiaoniang seems to dislike this Tang Wu. Suining remembers that Tang Wu is Tang Xiaoniang's brother. It is said to be the only brother. Many people don't remember his big name, maybe he doesn't have a big name either, but it's not important anymore. Soup 5 or soup 6 or soup 7, and rice dumpling rolls are the same for the people in the Prime Minister's residence. In my impression, he has visited the Prime Minister's mansion once or twice in the past decade, mostly secretly, like a thief. He was originally the uncle of the third girl, Xiaoniang. In the past, Suining would also call him Uncle Tang, according to the rules. Later, Xiaoniang refused and said that Suining would take advantage of others' uncles, and she would also take credit for them. Since then, Suining can no longer call him uncle. Of course, after many years, he has never seen Tang Wu again. I haven't seen Tang Wu for several years, but he still hasn't grown. The flowers in the Prime Minister's mansion have turned yellow for 2 or 3 generations. Tang Xiaoniang knelt at Xiaoniang's feet and said, Master, I haven't seen my brother for a long time, and there aren't any other relatives in Qinglou, so I called him to come to my door. She then said to Tang Wu, didn't I ask you to stay in the wing? Why are you running crazy with 2nd Mississippi? You 2 girls insist on playing ghost hunting with me. Tang Wu rubbed his head. I don't want to agree to her, but she begged me again. Suining stood on the steps holding a dragon-slaying tree, and when Tang Xiaoniang saw her, she became annoyed and said, what kind of behavior is it for 2nd Miss to stay up all night and have fun with a man in the mansion? I don't. Suining was very aggrieved. It's him. You don't need to argue, now you're not even as good as Yenner. Yenner still knows how to behave properly. The melon grown by oneself is sweet. Suining has never welcomed her. In the current situation, we are outnumbered by the enemy, so we should hurry back. Seeing Suining turn around and want to run away, Tang Xiaoniang grabbed her collar and hit her knee, causing Suining to kneel on the cold steps. Good men have been ruined by you. Tang Xiaoniang nodded at Suining's forehead. Butler Zhang Quan came at night with gentle steps. He was about 50 years old, with much graying hair. However, he was diligent, capable, and had a sense of propriety. He had been with Xiaoniang for decades, making him a capable person. Zhang Quan passed by Suining's side and bent over, crouching and shouting, 2nd Miss. How's the matter going? Why is it so urgent? Xiaoniang pointed to the charcoal pot and said, the fire is still hot. Let's warm up first. Master, Zhang Quan called out and didn't go to get warm. Instead, he pressed it against Xiaoniang's ear, didn't continue, and glanced at Suining again. She knelt on her knees, you said yours. Ah. It's all as the master said. Zhang Quan wiped the moisture from his neck and said, the master asked to see Uncle Tang away, but he didn't want outsiders to see him. If it's raining this year and the west is restless, there will be double the number of guards guarding the night in Qinglou. If anyone suspicious is seen, they will be questioned severely. It's not easy to send Uncle Tang away, even the girls and ladies in the house have to search for their sedan chairs when they go out. Did you carry the coffin out and get caught? The master expected very well. The old servant and a few servants carried the coffin and walked out of the city, saying disrespectfully that the coffin was prepared by the master for the old lady. Now that the old lady was angry, the master asked to return the coffin. So, the guard still opened the lid of the coffin and carefully examined it. Fortunately, Uncle Tang was not inside the coffin, otherwise the consequences would be unpredictable. Is it true that the imperial guards are so strict in their investigation? No, not only are there groups of guards on Changjia, but also the mansions where the adults of Qinglou live are scattered with guards watching. Tang Wu frowned and said, "What if I just swaggered out? We're all real relatives. My brother.in.law, you're a second-class official in the court, and the emperor values you. I'm not a bad person either. You make friends with me, and I'm not colluding with enemies or betraying the country. There's no need to worry about anything. As long as I reveal my brother.in.law's name, those petty soldiers and crab generals are afraid to kowtow to me. Who dares to block my path?" Stuff his mouth, Xiaoniang glared at Tang Wu. "Master, what should we do now?" Xiaoniang leaned down and pounded Xiaoniang's leg. "Nowadays, even the coffin has been searched. As a living person, how can he be sent out? The residence is also a disaster, making it easier to be held down. If it really doesn't work, we can only bury it on the spot. If the master treats my brother like this, won't he take my life? The master can think of another way." Xiaoniang's tears welled up on her collar. "I have no way. Butler Zhang, you also often run outside. Think of a way." Xiaoniang lowered her face. The old slave has limited knowledge and can only follow orders to handle matters, and cannot share the worries of the master. Zhang Quan hunched over with a guilty expression on his face. "Only Suining is left." Xiaoniang looked at Suining kneeling there. Suining stared at the octagonal lamp above her head without any fear. Xiaoniang couldn't help but say, "Second miss, you're so interested. You're still watching the lamp there. You're also a member of the mansion, so you should share your father's worries. If you can't come up with a good solution, you should kneel down tonight. I have a good idea, I wonder if you dare to use it, young lady." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Gonggong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Gonggong, what method is it? Let Uncle Tang go far and wide. How to fly far and wide. I haven't figured it out yet. Don't talk if you don't have an idea. No one thinks you're a mute. Xiaoniang nodded at Suining's head in hatred. Don't sleep at night, come here to bother me. It's not that I wanted to come, it's him scaring me. I thought there was a thief, that's why I chased after him. Suining pointed at Tang Wu. Suining, what did you say? I said. I thought there was a thief. Ha ha ha, with a sudden enlightenment, there's a solution. Xiaoniang stroked her hand and smiled, waving to the butler Zhang Quan and whispering a few words to Zhang Quan. Butler Zhang Quan hunched over and quickly moved out a ladder, stepping on it to light up the lanterns in the courtyard. Let's treat Tang Wu as a thief. If Tang Wu runs away, let's chase after him. If Tang Wu runs away, he will also slip away. If Tang Wu is caught by someone else. Xiaoniang rubbed her hands and said, if he falls into someone else's hands, he will be released in a few days. If he dares to say one more word, he will be killed by someone else, and I won't use money to save him. However, since he is a thief, it's better to catch him first and beat him up, and act like a better actor. Does the master make my brother a thief? It's a disguise. That's not good either, it's such a shameless thing. As long as you can smoothly slip far away and have money, your brother won't care about anything. Go pack your brother a bag and add more silver, Xiaoniang whispered to Tang Xiaoniang. Tang Xiaoniang personally went to the warehouse to pick up fine gold and silver. Seeing Tang Xiaoniang walking away, Xiaoniang instructed the butler Zhang Quan, call a few people and fight. The servants of the Prime Minister's mansion have always been well trained, saying that hitting the face will never hit the feet. Brother.in.law, I married my younger sister to you. You really did it, Tang Wu jumped up in pain. Strike. Don't force me to expose that little mess in your house, my mouth is not safe, Tang Wu shouted as he ran. Strike, catch up and hit hard. Tang Wu is no match for these people, being chased around like a rabbit. Oh, which song did you sing at Lord Xiang's mansion? I've caught up with it today, said a red-faced old man with fingers pinched and throat pointed, supported by 2.5 older children, standing at the entrance of the mansion and looking inside. The old man was wearing a Sichuan brocade robe, covered in a black gold-plated vest, and had a round hat with gold threads on his head. Like a wealthy old man. The old man's face turned red, he said a word, coughed, and took a long breath in his mouth. Now that it was cold, he took a breath and blew out a white smoke, as if someone's chimney had stood up. Xiaoniang stepped forward in 3 steps and 2 steps, saying, it turned out to be Grandpa Chang. I didn't expect Grandpa to arrive in the middle of the night. It's really disrespectful to welcome him from afar. Mr. Xiang is the 2nd grade of the Xiangua and a talented pillar of the country. The old servant is just a servant, and I dare not trouble Mr. Xiang to welcome him. Chang Gonggong, you are a popular figure around the emperor. Could you please come to the mansion? Xiaoniang and Chang Gonggong first praised each other. I'm old and sleepy, and I can't sleep at night either. Grandpa Chang rubbed his eyes and slowly walked down the stairs. I happened to hear that something happened to Mr. Xiang here, so I came to see. This is closing the door and hitting the dog. Ouch, ouch, Tang Wu was beaten by several servants and had nowhere to hide. Hearing the 4 words, shut the door and beat the dog, he was even more stimulated. You eunuch. Chang Gonggong's face suddenly changed. The 2.5-year-old children next to him stepped forward together, standing on both sides of Tang Wu, one on the left and the other on the right. Pa, the 2 of them gave Tang 50 or so crisp ear scrapes. Tang Wu's face is swollen as if it contains a toad. Chang Gonggong pinched his finger and laughed, eunuchs are also human beings. Aren't you beaten by eunuchs? A thing that's not even as good as eunuchs. Chang Gonggong lives in Kaiwanzi Hutong in the northeast corner of Qinglou. Apart from serving the emperor in the palace all year round, he also listens to plays and entertains himself in the courtyard of Qinglou. He is a popular figure around the emperor and also the emperor's eyes and ears. Although he is a 5th-rank official, he is more respected than the average 3rd-rank official. Who dares to scold him? Even cursing has to be done behind the scenes. Tang Wu is skilled in singing opera and has traveled with the troupe to many places. Perhaps Grandpa Chang has also heard of Tang Wu's plays. Perhaps they know each other. Just at this moment, Tang Wu's face was swollen 2 times, and Grandpa Chang's eyes were probably full of anger as he got older. Fortunately, he didn't recognize Tang Wu. It's a sin to bump into Grandpa Chang. This thief climbed over the wall and stole a package of gold and silver jewelry from the mansion in the middle of the night, and was caught. Xiaoniang grabbed the package from Tang Xiaoniang's hand and threw it to the ground. There are hairpins, gold bracelets, jade pendants, and several silver ingots in the package. Grandpa Chang looked at the jewelry on the ground and swallowed his saliva. So many treasures were prepared by Tang Xiaoniang for her brother. Sir, this thief has also been beaten and taught a lesson. Why don't we let him go? Tang Xiaoniang really felt sorry for her brother and thought of apologizing for Tang Wu. If we continue to fight, she will go to the grave to burn paper for her brother next year. Xiaoniang secretly glanced at Grandpa Chang. At the sight of the woman, she still wanted to let the thief go. Grandpa Chang's small eyes were bright and lively. According to me, I should go to the magistrate's place and beat 40 big sticks. Not to mention 40 big sticks, 10 big sticks are enough to kill the people in the government office. Chang Gonggong, isn't this asking for Tang Wu's life? Tang Wu snatched the dragon subduing wood from Suining's hand and held on to Chang Gonggong's neck, saying, "Everyone, let me go, otherwise I'll take the life of this eunuch." Only focused on watching the play, Suining still held the stick given by his grandmother in his hand. This stick has become Tang Wu's weapon. If he strangles Grandpa Chang to death, it will be amazing. Xiaoniang also startled and said, "If you want gold, silver, wealth, or silk, you can give it to you. You can release Duke Chang first. I won't let him go until I'm safe. You little brat, dare to touch your grandfather and give it a try. Give it a try, then give it a try." Tang Wuzi pulled back and Chang Gonggong rolled his eyes, his tongue sticking out halfway. "Alright, don't try, you brat, you're taking my life." Tang Wu held on to Grandpa Chang and headed out. Come on, come on." Grandpa Chang shouted in a sharp voice. The 2.5-year-old children around him seemed to have no martial arts skills or any sharp weapons. In the current situation, they probably haven't seen each other before. They just stand there, otherwise where to start? 4 or 5 young men in black clothes and black armor flew down from the wall of the Prime Minister's mansion. If it weren't for what he had seen with his own eyes, Suining wouldn't have believed that a person could still survive by jumping off such a high wall. The young man stood steadily. Knight, black clothes, black armor, black helmet covering most of the face, the black helmet tassel also melted into the night, leaving only a pair of eyes staring at everyone. At the moment the man in black landed, he drew his sword from his waist. The night was as cold as water, and the cold light of the sword made it hard for him to open his eyes. Tang Wu was also stunned, forgetting that he was still holding Grandpa Chang in his arms. Grandpa Chang's cries became increasingly mournful. One of the people in black tiptoed on the steps and flew half a person high. In the air, he turned around and kicked off the dragon-slaying wood in Tang Wu's hand. His wrist turned around and the knife in his hand pressed tightly against Tang Wu's neck. Everything is too fast. The young man's knife emitted white light in the air, while the helmet tassel behind him remained intact. Grandpa Chang is used to being pampered and pampered, how could he have experienced such an exciting thing? It's like walking my head around my waist. Immediately, my eyes blurred, my nose bleeds, and I fainted. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Eunuchs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Eunuchs. Tang Wu was almost scared and crying. These black-clothed people who soar through the clouds and mist seem like people he can't afford to provoke. They have really poked a hornet's nest, with clear guns easy to block and hidden cheats difficult to defend against. These groups of people all want their own lives. Fortunately, Lord Xiaolan arrived in time. Xiaoniang bowed to the young man. Mr. Xiaolan. This title is not very formal. Since the emperor ascended the throne, the country has been relatively peaceful and the people are safe. In recent years, it seems that the security in Qinglou has not improved compared to previous years. In order to protect the imperial city, the number of imperial guards has increased from 3 to 12. The 12 guards are distributed inside the imperial city, along the moat and every street and alley of the Qinglou, surrounding a Qinglou like an iron barrel. During the day, it goes without saying that even in the middle of the night, one can see them patrolling with swords, their eyes wide open, like owls. There is no curfew in Xianguo. Small vendors and peddlers do business before dawn. Those who sell stinky tofu and wonton sometimes have to work late at night, even in the cold winter months. They are accompanied by these guards, except the stars in the sky. Lord Xiaolan is one of the members of this imperial guard. Suining doesn't have this little blue adult in his memory. Now he is armored and only his eyes are visible, and Suining cannot distinguish what he looks like. He only thinks that he is playing with his sword very well, and his moves are fast and accurate. Catching Tang Wu is like catching a chicken. Lord Xiaolan looked serious and said, "The thief has been captured with his hands tied up. Do you have any orders from Lord Xiang? If not, we will take them with us. Don't let Lord Xiaolan take Tang Wu away." Tang Wu was a man with a loose mouth and was taken away by the Imperial Guard. Before the various torture tools were put on, Tang Wu had already vomited out his ancestors for 18 generations. Seeing that Lord Xiaolan was about to take Tang Wu away, Suining quickly lifted the dragon subduing wood to block him in front. Perhaps due to professional habits, a group of black-clad people drew out their swords with a loud bang. The dragon-slaying wood in Suining's hand was broken into 2 pieces. Hard interception is definitely impossible. This father.in.law. Suining flattered with a smile. Wow. The guards drew their swords again. This little blue grandpa. Wow. The guards drew their swords again. Can you stop beating around the bush? People who are scared won't even speak. Suining thought for a while before whispering, "This little one. Lord Xiaolan." As the saying goes, a good man doesn't fight a woman. Let me say a few words, you won't kill me, will you? Speak. Xiaolan, my grandmother has been bedridden lately. She's getting old and can't hear any big news. Although this thief stole things from our mansion, they haven't been lost. My grandmother is kind-hearted and can't fight or kill anyone. Why don't Xiaolan let this person go? What if not? Excuse me. What is the responsibility of your guard? Guard the emperor, guard the imperial city. You see, this is the Prime Minister's mansion. We are just ordinary people and don't need to be guarded by the imperial guards. It seems. It's not your job. If a thief enters our family, it is a private matter of our Prime Minister's family. If the thief is handed over to the public, it should also be handed over to the magistrate of Qinglou, shouldn't it? When the time comes, whether to kill or let go, the magistrate will naturally make a fair judgment. Yes, Lord Xiaolan, how can we bother you with such a small matter? We'll hand over this thief to the magistrate ourselves later. Xiaoniang quickly agreed. Little Blue remained silent. Suining pointed to Chang Gonggong on the ground and said, "Your father.in.law is still unconscious. The ground is so cold, and your father.in.law is getting old." Chang Gonggong is a member of the emperor. The Imperial Guard is also a member of the emperor. Probably wearing a pair of pants. Presumably, it was because he felt sorry for Grandpa Chang. Lord Xiaolan put the sword into its sheath. Commanding the 2 young men to carry Grandpa Chang, Tang Wu was spared and said, "Since you want to personally hand it over to the magistrate, then don't disturb me too much." Tang Wu was so frightened that he collapsed to the ground. After a long pause, he hugged Xiaoniang's leg and cursed, "It was all your idea to make me pretend to be a thief. I almost had my head cut off by the Imperial Guards. Now you have to send me to the Yamen. If Uncle Tang can save his life, it's better to cherish his fortune and escape quickly," Suining had to remind him. Tang Wu finally understood and gathered the jewelry on the ground, rolling it up into a bundle, before sneaking out of the Prime Minister's mansion in the darkness. This troublemaker has finally left. Fortunately, it's a young Mr. Xiaolan. If it were someone else, it might not be easy to deal with. Xiaoniang wiped the sweat off her forehead and said, "At this moment, both the Imperial Guards and Duke Chang have left. There is no one on the long street, and Tang Wu can go further. This Little Blue is actually a talented person. He has good martial arts skills and is also handsome." Tang Xiaoniang praised Little Blue endlessly. "Unfortunately, he's a eunuch," Suining sighed. It is said that one of the 12 forbidden guards is clean, the most ruthless, carefree, and extremely filial to the emperor. Now it seems that they truly live up to their reputation, not to mention to the emperor. Even if Duke Chang around the emperor was in trouble, they ran very fast. Who is a eunuch? Tang Xiaoniang asked Suining. Little Blue, sir. Nonsense. Xiang rubbed her hands and looked at the direction where Little Blue had disappeared, as if reminiscing. Little Blue's name is Lan Jie. I remember, he was about 15 or 16 years old. Not everyone can hold the position of the imperial guard, but he is the emperor's vassal or the son of a vassal. Fading, the color of clothes becomes lighter. Hair shedding, birds and animals changing feathers. Blue fading is not much better than the above two words. Because his father was also an official in the court and was known as the Blue Lord, the young Lan Jie was also known as the Little Blue Lord. This child, Lan Jie, had a noble status and his mother was the only sister of the emperor, Princess Guo. How could he possibly be a eunuch? Dad. I was wrong. Suining appeared respectful and polite on the surface, but his heart had already blossomed with joy. Fortunately, Lan Jie was not a eunuch. With such good martial arts, such clear eyes, and thick eyelashes, he was such a young man. If he were a eunuch, why was the eunuch so good-looking? Tang Wu's feet were windy, and he carried silver on his body. He had already run away without a trace. Everyone in the Prime Minister's mansion breathed a sigh of relief. When Xiang passed on the news to Mrs. Xiang, she was very happy and held back. She walked back and forth in the room 2 or 3 times, leaning on a crutch. With steady steps, she didn't look like an old lady lying in bed and groaning at all. With her high spirits, she could ride a fast horse to the border to fight. Suining was still holding a medicine bowl in his hand, and when he just gave Madame Xiang a spoonful of medicine, he saw that she was full of vitality. It shouldn't be so. Grandmother, how are you? Silly child, my grandmother is not good anymore. She was fine from the beginning. You kicked my grandmother, and she hurt a little and passed away. Did your grandmother lie down these days and drink these medicines again? Did your father even carry a coffin into the mansion? Mr. Xiaolan, please ask everyone who is reading, do you have any votes? Welcome to vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Girl, grandmother is not sick, how can the coffin enter? Unfortunately, the inspection was tight and we couldn't lift Tang Wuzhuang out. Mrs. Xiang lost in thought. The soup is dark and dark, like it has been soaked in a pickled vegetable jar. The beauty and ugliness of a person are predetermined, which is not enough to say. It's just that Tang Wu has seen the world before, likes to play tricks, is greedy and untrustworthy, which disgusts Madame Xiang. I remember in the summer of the 2nd year of Xianhua, Tang Xiaoniang fell ill. Tang Wu secretly came to the mansion under the pretext of visiting his sister and brought a bag of dates. The Xiang family received a jujube, gave him 50 taels of silver, and set up a carriage to take him away. However, he untied his belt, took off his silk pants, and jumped into the pond unwilling to come up. He said that Tang Xiaoniang was seriously ill and did not want to live anymore. He wanted to drown in the water. Under the blue sky and white sun, at the residence of a second-class official in Qinglou, an adult man was floating in the pond with his bare arms and small pants. Several maids passed by there, blushing with embarrassment. Later, Tang Xiaoniang cried and begged, and Xiang softened her heart. She gave him a 500 taels of silver note, which was deeply loved by her siblings. After receiving 500 taels of silver note, Tang Wu quickly ran away overnight. At that time, the average farmer's annual harvest was only 20 taels, and the family's food, clothing, and expenses added up to 17 or 18 taels, which was enough to chew on. At that time, Tang Wu also agreed, and after receiving 500 taels of silver notes, he would walk as far as he could and never come again. Now is the 12th year of the Xianguo reign. This time, he didn't come empty-handed either. It said he brought a few sweet potatoes. Mrs. Xiang sat down and grabbed a handful of red beans. Since Xiang Suining began to remember, there was a small bamboo basket in Mrs. Xiang's house, which contained a full liter of red beans. Whenever she had leisure time, Mrs. Xiang would grab a handful and sit slowly counting. In summer, it was the wind in the middle of the street, and in winter, it was the snow in December. Each red bean was polished and round by her, like blood beads. He came to want silver. Xiaoniang felt a little annoyed but also helpless. But he is her brother. If he really wants to dig a pit in the wilderness, I'm afraid she will be sad. Tang Xiaoniang stood stealthily outside the door for a while, but now she couldn't stand anymore and walked into the East Cross courtyard. Originally, the old lady was safe and sound. As long as the old lady was safe and sound, the old master didn't have to worry. Because the old man was injured, the old master even punished Yenner to kneel in the snow. Shouldn't you know whether to punish Yenner by kneeling or not? Yenner is still a child. It is because we are children that we need good teaching. If a child does not teach us, it will be too late to grow up like you. Madam. Tang Xiaoniang didn't say anything about Madam Xiang, but felt like she was at a disadvantage. Just as she was about to distinguish, Xiaoniang rubbed her sleeve and had to take a step back to bless her. Madam Xiang is right in everything she says. I taught her without direction. The next day, I will kneel in front of the Bodhisattva and repent. If you really kneel down and repent, that would be great. Don't keep your words to yourself. Like your brother, who came to the mansion twice to catch the autumn breeze. My brother asked for silver, which the master agreed to. Besides, he didn't give much. Apart from silver, my brother didn't cause any other trouble. Tang Xiaoniang felt a bit frustrated. She should have been the head of the family in this mansion. This 60-something old lady said she didn't care about anything, but she always had to give her advice on what Tang Xiaoniang did. A person of this age who doesn't eat and drink well every day likes to meddle in her own affairs, even talking about Tang Xiaoniang's brother's affairs. Madame Xiang's eyes were sharp, and Tang Xiaoniang's thoughts were clear to her. You only think that Tang Wu wants some money. He came to us because he caused trouble at the tea house that day. Did he cause trouble? I shouldn't have said this. That day, Tang Wu snatched the girl that Grandpa Chang was interested in, and Grandpa Chang became very bold. It's impossible, my brother is not that kind of person, Tang Xiaoniang said reluctantly. It's all nonsense. Why do others say that your brother is robbing a girl, but not that he is robbing Grandpa Chang? There must be a reason for this. Madame Xiang remained calm and composed. Tang Xiaoniang has eaten again. That day I heard that someone had offended Grandpa Chang, who even caused someone to smash the tea house. So it was Tang Wu. Otherwise, why did he hide in our mansion? He thought he would be fine if he did. Grandpa Chang was humiliated that day and couldn't vent his anger. Recently, Chang has been sending people to search nearby. No wonder Grandpa Chang took the eunuch for a stroll so late. It turned out he couldn't sleep, but rather caught someone. Fortunately, Grandpa Chang is getting old and his eyes are not very good, making it difficult to see people clearly. He didn't recognize Tang Wu right in front of him, otherwise Tang Wu's grave grass would have been 3 feet tall. Currently, Duke Chang has had an accident in the Prime Minister's mansion, and he has come to his senses, afraid that it may not be easy to deal with. The people in the palace all know that Duke Chang will avenge him on the spot if he has any grudges. After experiencing such a thing last night, Duke Chang should not easily give up. Xiaoniang was a bit worried. What if Grandpa Chang comes to ask for someone? Tell others to send it to the magistrate for punishment. He will definitely pursue the magistrate, won't he reveal his true identity? Master, what should we do? Tang Xiaoniang knelt down and grabbed the corner of Xiangdang's robe. Never let my brother fall into someone else's hands. Your brother won't fall into the hands of anyone else. He has already taken wings and flown far away. Madame Xiang snorted coldly, poor our family, we still need to give an explanation to Duke Chang. You go back and think carefully, Mrs. Xiang said, feeling tired and driving Xiangdang and Miss Tang back. I really can't bear to see Tang Xiaoniang showing off her authority and crying whenever she has something to do. Suining brewed a cup of Tai Guanyin for Madame Xiang, poured the dark green tea into a white porcelain bowl, and after being heated with hot water, the leaves slowly spread out, with a fragrant aroma. Madame Xiang took a sip of tea, poured the red beans back into the bamboo basket, and then Suining rubbed her shoulders. Grandmother, if there's anything next time, don't hide it from me. Grandmother doesn't want to hide it from you, she's afraid of scaring you. Now that I am also old, I can share my grandmother's worries. Yes, we have grown up in Suining and can share our grandmother's worries, Mrs. Xiang caressed her hair with care. I heard that the Imperial Guards are also here. And Lan Yong's child. Who is Lan Yong? Oh, your child's family, I'm afraid you don't know him. He's the Blue Lord in the mouth of Qingqing people. His son, Lan Jie, should be 1 or 2 years older than you. He's currently working in the Forbidden Army. Last night, Lord Xiao Lan let Uncle Tang go. I heard he cut off your dragon-slaying wood, did he scare you? Suining shook his head. In the future, when you see those forbidden armies, you should stay away, okay? Suining nodded. Encountering Lord Xiaolan. Mrs. Xiang was also taken away. Encountering Lan Jie, you need to stay further away, you know. Why? There are some truths that you don't need to understand, Mrs. Xiang murmured, you just need to remember your grandmother's words. The farther you see him, the better. Grandmother, I remember. Of course, he's a member of the Imperial Guard. You're from the daughter's family in the brothel, so I'm afraid there won't be much chance to meet you. I've been thinking too much. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Qinglou. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Qinglou Xiangdang woke up in the third shift, dressed neatly, and rode in a carriage across half of Qingqing to go to court. When going out, the morning sun has not yet risen, and the morning dew is not dry. About an hour in the morning. Generally speaking, when it's time for breakfast, you'll be back. That day, Suining accompanied his grandmother to talk and laugh, ate a test paper, drank a bowl of babao congee with some salty melon strips, and ate a salted duck egg. Seeing Grandma Su pruning 4 pots of flowers and plants, she did not see Xiangdang's carriage return. You go to the door and take a look, don't let the old master get stumbling on something. Madame Xiang reminded Grandma Su with some concern. Suining is not panicking. There is Tang Xiaoniang at home, and Xiangdang will not be tripped by anything else. Tang Xiaoniang is the bait, Xiangdang is the fish. Did someone scatter the fish with a net? I haven't heard that the Xiang family has formed any new enemies. It's past lunch time. Madame Xiang's lunch was a bit sluggish. Suining ate a bowl of japonica rice and some steamed cakes. The sauce duck that Mrs. Xiang didn't want to eat, she twisted a duck leg and started gnawing on it. There used to be delicious food in the mansion, but when eating at a place, Suining dared to twist off the duck legs, and Tang Xiaoniang dared to twist off Suining's legs. Therefore, looking at the sumptuous food, Suining could only eat the leftovers. Later on, Tang Xiaoniang simply carried the old lady behind her back and drove Suining to the lower room for dinner. Those big fish and meat were only visible to Suining at the ancestral altar. In those years, every time we worshipped our ancestors, those chickens, ducks, and Suining wanted to lie down and take a bite. Every time we worshipped, others wiped their tears, and she wiped her saliva. Fortunately, my grandmother has been pretending to be sick these days. The kitchen always brings food to her room. My grandmother loves her, not to mention the sauce duck, but the phoenix flying in the sky. Suining wants to eat it, and my grandmother also waits on the ground with a pot. Before the duck legs in her hand were finished, Xiaoniang came crying and said, "Oh, oh, 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 oh." Every day receiving the favor of the old master and mourning every day, Madame Xiang looked down upon her and said, "What are you doing here?" Greetings to the old lady. Whispering. Whispering. It's cold, there's no need to run back and forth. Please forgive me. Madam, sobbing, Tang Xiaoniang's tears were like broken beads. The master hasn't come back yet, it's already this hour. Who can afford to eat? Suining had duck legs in her mouth, neither swallowing nor not swallowing. Tang Xiaoniang is so sad that it doesn't seem appropriate to eat and chew on her own. Let's eat duck legs first, it will cool down later. Madame Xiang said indifferently, it's just coming back a little late. I can't say for sure if there's something wrong with the man's family. Why would he just cry? The old master must have been entangled by some kind of warbler, bird, and swallow. Who is entangled but not entangled? Madame Xiang became more calm. If her son were really entangled by some kind of bird, and swallow, it would be better. She also killed Tang Xiaoniang's authority. Tang Xiaoniang felt disheartened after eating and said, "The servants have come to report that the master and Grandpa Chang have gone to the spring flower tower." Suining secretly sighed in her heart about her father's reputation. Nowadays, everyone dares to go to the brothel. It's like going to heaven. In the winter of the 7th year of the Xianguo reign, Dang went to Chunhua Tower to have a drink. It is said that it was still a banquet hosted by someone else, and not going was purely for social purposes. Upon returning home, Tang Xiaoniang was about to suspend the beam, and it took Dang several days to coax her over. Chunhua Tower is a brothel built along the river, right by the Yong'an River. The girls inside are lively and fragrant, all of whom are outstanding. At night, the girls took a boat to swim along the Yong'an River, with swaying lanterns and elegant clothes, soaking in the fragrance of the Yong'an River. Thinking that Dang might be up and down there, Tang Xiaoniang couldn't sit still and rubbed a handkerchief, causing her to break her heart and say, About half an hour later, Tang Xiaoniang whimpered several times. The maids tidied up the utensils and Suining drank another cup of tea and ate a piece of hawthorn cake. Finally, Dang returned. Tang Xiaoniang was filled with grief and anger and said, "The master is reluctant to return home from the Spring Blossom Tower. What's the point of me and myself living? It's better to hang myself." As usual, Dang should quickly apologize and swear with a clear conscience. Dang didn't pull her this time. Upon seeing this, Tang Xiaoniang lowered her flag and stopped beating her drums. She sat back and grabbed the hawthorn cake from the plate and took a bite, saying, "Miss Eyre, you have a great appetite. The taste of this hawthorn cake is quite good. Miss Eyre is not worried about your father either. Don't you know where my dad went? I'm not worried. What is Chunhua Tower? It's a place that eats people but doesn't spit out bones. It will suffer losses. My dad won't lose out if he goes there." Tang Xiaoniang was eating hard, tears falling down like broken beads, and Suining stabbing was a bit harsh. Suining sat silently and ate another piece of hawthorn cake. In ancient times, men were all 3 wives and 4 concubines. Dang went to the Spring Blossom Tower and didn't marry a mistress or a mistress to enter the door. Why cry? I heard you were with Grandpa Chang. When were you so friendly? Mrs. Xiang asked. Xiaoniang was taken off her brocade vest and warmed her hands with a Tang posy as the maids waited on her. If it were as my mother said, it would be great. It's just morning court today. The emperor asked me to go. I asked some trivial matters, and Grandpa Chang was also there. Grandpa Chang didn't say anything else, did he? Tell the emperor about the city's experiences. What have you heard? The city people are spreading rumors about my unfilial piety, and the high hall is still there, so I carried a coffin and entered the door. It seems that what happened that night offended Grandpa Chang. Madame Xiang grabbed a handful of red beans and rubbed them in her hand. The emperor didn't scold you, did he? That's not true. The emperor still protects me, saying that family matters are not enough for outsiders. Why did you go to Chunhua Tower with Duke Chang after leaving the court, thinking of offending Grandpa Chang? I also paid attention to inquire. That day, he had a dispute with Tang over a girl named Ashui from the Chunhua Tower. I spent 20 taels asking Ashui to sing a song to Grandpa Chang, but he didn't seem to like it. After sitting down, we left. I secretly followed Grandpa Chang to his palace courtyard and saw his carriage return to his residence before I returned. Xiaoniang rubbed his hands and said, "So, I don't know what to do. Are you afraid that he will tell us about the danger he encountered in our mansion that night?" Xiaoniang nodded. If the incident of that night is brought up, the emperor will surely be angry. Even the second-class official's house is restless, and he will not be able to sleep soundly again. If the emperor had someone carefully investigate what happened that night, Tang would have to be dug up again. Tang Xiaoniang, however, did not take Grandpa Chang seriously. He is just a clean person, and the master is of the second grade. There is no reason for the master to apologize to him. Even if he doesn't apologize, how dare he? He exposed what happened that night, and your brother's life is afraid to end. Xiaoniang squinted her eyes. End of this chapter.